In this video, we're going to be looking at the pros and cons of, or strengths and weaknesses of research and development and subsidies. So starting with research and development, the strengths, spending on research and development creates economy-wide spillover effects, or as we like to refer to them, positive externalities. So without the support of the government, society more generally would not experience a lot of these positive externalities because the private industry would under-allocate resources to R&D because they only care about their private costs and benefits. So positive externalities can include the productivity benefits of new technology for other businesses. So if we come up with a new robotics or new ideas or new artificial intelligence, other businesses in that industry can then benefit from that new technology and they can use that to increase their productivity, improve their profits. Productivity benefits increase aggregate supply and productive capacity and on average reduce cost of production, which leads to increased output and lower prices throughout the economy. Lower prices reduce inflationary pressures and help to boost our international competitiveness and therefore achieve strong and sustainable economic growth and low inflation. So a lot of these benefits from research and development don't just accrue to the company that do it, but accrue more broadly to society as a whole by increasing our productivity and lowering our prices and therefore creating jobs and boosting our productive capacity. If the research and development is into healthcare products, then that has clear positive externalities as well for anyone suffering from that illness and anyone related or that knows that person as well, that benefits as well from their improved health. Research and development grants can target particular industries or sectors that provide social benefits for the country. So recent changes to research and development grants and tax concessions specifically allow clinical trials of life-saving drugs to be exempt from any cap on tax concessions, which basically means that regardless of how much money they spend, they can still receive that tax concession because they're investing in something that's important as a life-saving drug. Other businesses would have a cap on their tax concession, meaning if they spend ridiculous amounts of money, then they can't necessarily claim the higher tax concession. So the ability of research and development to target particular sectors or industries makes it really powerful compared to macroeconomic demand management policies, which generally work more broadly on the economy as a whole, like income or company tax cuts. Weaknesses. Significant benefits accrue directly to companies that innovate or create inventions through research and development, such as an increased market share or competitive advantage because they've got better productivity and lower prices. The problem is that sometimes it gives this impression that the government is backing certain industries while letting other industries suffer. So the government support is not allowing market forces, which is the free market, to determine which industries are successful and allowing price signals and relative prices to have their influence on the market without any government intervention. So such government intervention could potentially lead to a less efficient allocation of resources because businesses know they're likely to be subsidised and therefore it's sort of a form of protection which may encourage them to be less efficient. Subsidising individual businesses through research and development spending requires a reduction in tax collections. So whenever you give tax concessions for businesses, that means that they're collecting less tax essentially, which can put pressure on the federal government. This may mean the government has to implement higher taxes in other areas, which may have a negative impact on the economy. It also may push up interest rates because we experience the crowding out through higher budget deficits. Government spending on research and development through tax concessions or direct grants can have the unintentional effect of crowding out the private sector and can potentially lead to a less efficient allocation of resources. This is especially the case if the additional benefits to society and the broader business community are not sufficient to justify the expense. So we need to make sure that all tax concessions are being used in areas that are going to have wider benefits, social benefits for the economy. Otherwise, it's just going to cost the government money and cause us to run in bigger budget deficits. Subsidies. Strengths of subsidies. In the short term, subsidies reduce firms' cost of production, which allow them to continue producing when normal price signals, or what that means is the free market, would dictate that they close. So if you look for farmers, for example, we can give them subsidies when they're experiencing turmoil for a short period of time so they can stay on their feet. If we didn't do that, there's the chance that that business would close. So that's really important in industries such as agriculture. Given the importance of agricultural production and the guaranteed food supply, it's critical for our long-term welfare that these subsidies are put in place and can be justified on the basis that they encourage producers to continue producing and not shut down. Continued production also keeps prices in check. So the idea is that the subsidies can increase economic growth, but there's also more competition in the long term, which keeps prices down. So subsidies in particular industries that reduce firms' cost of production are really effective if they prevent businesses from closing down, which then has long-term benefits for boosting our supply potential, but also ensuring that prices are kept down because competition remains strong in those industries. Subsidies can target particular sectors that require support. So unlike monetary policy, which again is very blunt, or even sort of broader supply-side policies like cutting company taxes, subsidies can be very specific to industries that need assistance. So a good example would be during extreme weather events or floods, they can subsidise the agricultural industries, and therefore they can allow for increased production and allow them to stay afloat. Because of their ability to target specific industries, subsidies can also be used to assist beneficial industries in their early years of development. So they're really good for infant firms, infant industries that are just starting up. So for example, subsidies for medical research technologies or tech startups. So tech startups is a really good example. They need the initial capital to start their business, and then they may grow and expand and really help the economy. Export development grants is another good example where you can allow an exporter access to a market. Once they've got that market, they may flourish and grow their size going forward. And that allows for increased output with low inflation. In terms of weaknesses, subsidies can result in short-term benefits to economic growth and employment, but can have longer-term costs. For example, subsidies to certain industries to promote jobs and growth can result in higher prices across the economy in the long term, because firms may become reliant on them and less efficient, and that can actually hurt the goal of low inflation as these inefficiencies are embedded throughout society. As with all budget-related expenditures, subsidies to certain industries require funding. So the funding takes place through tax collections, could lead to higher income or company taxes, can put pressure on the federal budget. That can lead to higher taxes to support these subsidies. It can also lead to crowding out because we run bigger budget deficits. So like all the other examples of increased spending, they can have unintentional effects through crowding out, which can lead to a less efficient allocation of resources. If there's no additional benefit to society, then the subsidies are just going to put pressure on the budget. Subsidies to certain industries will provide those industries with an advantage relative to other industries. So if businesses are getting grants or financial assistance, they can essentially use that money and have more purchasing power, which can actually lead to higher prices for some of the things that they're supplying, some of the things that they're purchasing, sorry. So for example, if I get a $10,000 subsidy for my business, I have more purchasing power to buy goods and services. That can potentially lead to higher prices for other people because my demand increases. So critics of the long-term subsidisation of Australia's motor vehicle industry argue that the subsidies led to a lack of innovation and a lack of responsiveness to the industry or market preferences, which reduced allocative and dynamic efficiency. Thank you.